So it is whatever month it is. September, got our meeting, got a light agenda. We have Brian, so this will probably be a short meeting overall, and I'm repeating myself. Okay, first things first. Early wave experiments demonstrated that radio waves behave similarly to light. For this reason, what were these radio waves initially called? Anyone else? Anyone? He's right. I didn't know that either. No. Now we all know, right? That's the beauty here. All right, so that's that. Let me make sure I'm recording. It says
Remember that there'll be a quiz at the end of the quarter.
shh. That's the holiday meeting game. No more new trivia. It's like, okay, what did we ask in November? All right. So we got a light agenda here today. I sent out the minutes, sent out the agenda. Sorry, they got sent out late. I still have no Wi-Fi or internet at my house, so everything's on a hotspot, and that's fun and exciting. Any issues, concerns, any edits, addendums to the minutes? Someone want to do the thingy about blessing it? Anyone motion to approve? Second? Third? We'll go through old business, new business, which is just really the swap meet. Sadly, we don't have a member of the month this month. And then at 9:30, so we may bump around a little bit, we have Brian on Zoom for the back half of his presentation. He's only got about 20 minutes, I think. And of course, my webcam is in a box, so this will be fun and exciting.
Lee, may I make a request?
Absolutely.
If this may be a short meeting, can I meet with the officers after the meeting just for a quick decision, some guidance on a question I have?
Did you bring the beer?
I was not asked to.
Absolutely. So any and all officers are here. Lloyd's not here today. I knew that. We could have a chat with Mr. Dwight afterwards. That'd be swell. Absolutely. All right. Let's get this party started. We have 100 people on Facebook now. Yep. We have more Facebook people than club members. We need to fix that. The last 3 that came on, Tim actually has joined the club too, right? Mark, is that correct? Was Tim the one that sent the thing? I think. So we have a Facebook member who's also a club member. So that's good too. And he's a bit of a drive away, but what I'm gathering is he's going to be at the swap meet and looking for tubes and may have some tubes and yada, yada, yada. So, hey, that's beautiful. As you know, Paul did his engineering whiz-bang to our mixer. We're still having some flakiness with audio coming out of the PC. It worked in my house, didn't work here. We'll work through it. That's really only critical, again, like today when we have Zoom. We'll figure it out. But broken record time. Paul doesn't want to play anymore. He's taking his radio and going home. So we're still looking for a treasurer for the new year. He will be around to assist in the transition, but he's going to not play. So if anyone's interested, and we'll have more conversation about officers here in just a second. And then we already started to communicate the swap meet, so now we're going to go kind of bonkers now going forward. That was all the old stuff. New stuff. Okay, officer election. Normally, thank you, Dwight, for keeping me honest. The elections are done in October. We ain't got no meeting in October.
Nominations.
I apologize. Nominations in October. We don't have a meeting because of the swap meet. So I wanted to bring this to the room today now, and so people can think about it. So in November when we come around, hopefully it won't be all new news and people will be thinking about this a bit. These are the current officers. Jim's vice president, Paul's the treasurer, but remember, he's not going to be here. So Lloyd is the secretary, Mark's membership, Harry's is the executive operations coordinator and chief vacuum tube owner, and then I'm El Presidente. I've not had discussions with the officers yet to see who may be wanting to stay in their roles or not. I don't know if that's part of your conversation, but we could take your time and do the same thing. If anyone is interested in throwing their name in a hat or recommending somebody as a role, like I said, gotta have a treasurer, start thinking about it. So, because like I said, we won't have a meeting next month to go into real detail about this. So, start thinking about nominations. Swap meet. It's all about the swap meet. Next month. No meeting. Don't come here. There's going to be no one here. As you all know, or if you don't know, the Fowler Park, we do the spring event indoors, and it's a little more elaborate with lunch and stuff. The fall one is done outdoors in the pavilion. Very nice. Fowler facility has proven to me to be an absolute home run. The outside, of course, there is no food. There is power, so we can hook things up and run them. But there's no lunch. It's a little more, what glamping? It's glamping, right? Anyone who's going to be working, this is a quick conversation because the fall ones tend to be a lot simpler. So other than putting out some signage and getting the radios that are going to be auctioned off and things like that, there really isn't a lot of logistics involved compared to like the spring. So I would ask anybody who's, and we'll go through this here in a minute, signage or anything, whoever's doing something, plan to be there at 7:30 that morning. That's when the park officially opens. I think technically we can't get into the pavilion until 8, I think, right? There's some discrepancy with the park versus to get in. So I'm gonna play dumb and we're gonna show up at 7:30. Signage. Now, Mark, I think you historically handled putting the signs up, correct? All right, can we call on you for that again?
Yeah, I still got them in my truck, so
You never took them out?
my truck's still empty there.
All right, so,
That truck is 27 years old, so there's a 50-50 chance.
all right, so Mark will handle doing the signage. In case you all don't know, and you'll know in a minute, but Dwight's got 6 gorgeous radios, and he'll go into a little more detail, that we're going to auction off. So those are in your possession, right? All right, so you'll bring those, okay? And then you had, God, I'm losing my brain. Yeah, no, you had something else to auction off too, right?
I did.
You did? Somebody did. Anyway, there were a couple of other things that were coming. I thought it was you. Never mind. So anyway, if you're working, bringing stuff, please be there at 7:30. Otherwise, plan to be there at about 8 o'clock. Right. I'm going to now start. I'm going to make another flyer promoting these auction radios and stuff, and I'll start advertising that. We've already got it out there on the antique, the radio attic, and some of the other things as well. So it is out there, but we're going to keep doing that. Speak of the devil. So these are some radios that Dwight has come across, and I'm going to give him the floor to talk about these and how we're going to do those. And I know, don't you historically do the auction too? Aren't you the auctioneer, Mark, as well?
Historically, yes.
Okay.
But I don't do the silent auction because
It's silent.
I'm
Right, 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 right. So Dwight will give us the 411 and all of this.
Good morning, everyone. So, if you recall last year at the fall swap meet, we had some donated radios from the Raymond Butler collection. Raymond was a former member of the club who had passed away in April of 2024. And his girlfriend had collection of his radios that she donated to the club, and we sold them off last year at a silent auction. Lo and behold, she came across some more that must have been swept under the rug or something, that she just magically came up with some more that were in his collection, and here they are. As you can see, 5 of them are 1920s battery sets, TRF sets. And then we've got the one silver tone here at the bottom left. That's from 1955. That radio does work, works nicely. It's just a simple design. The others have been cleaned up, gone over them, and each one of them had a rider's schematic printed off and inside them. And I believe most of them had a little index card that Raymond had jotted down the dial settings you needed to pull in the different AM channels.
Executive slides that they worked at.
So they worked at one time. Now they do not have tubes. The battery sets do not have tubes. So that's where Aries comes into play, because Aries has some O1As. All of these use the O1A tube, and they do not have the tubes in them. So if you've got some in your collection, or if you need some, Aries has some available for sale, and he's planning on bringing them to the fall swap meet. So might just want to check your inventory and see what you've got. Yeah. Now let me see. There's the one, the 1925. It also, according to Radio Museum, took 3 DV2s or 2 DV5s, which I believe were DeForest tubes. There was a name for that type of a tube. Audions, maybe, that also could be used. But the first 2 radios are pretty fascinating. The one there, that DeForest Crosley, could not find much information about it at all on the internet. It's called the Conway. There's a chassis number associated with it, that there was also like a console version with that chassis in it. It does not have a lift top. You have to get to the chassis and the tubes from the back. The back pops out, whereas all these other battery sets, the top lift is hinged and it lifts open. The top middle one, as you see, is all leather. So that's leather embossed, but it's pretty fascinating. Just take a look at that design, look at the dials. Pretty high-end radio for its time. The others are, I guess kind of your standard TRF sets. The AMRAD, in my research on this model, that's actually an early model. They came out with 2 models, or same model, but 2 designs. This is an earlier design where the tuning dials had a pointer and a scale, whereas the later models had a window and a dial inside the window that you used for tuning. Encourage you to take a look at these at the auction. Maybe you don't have a 100-year-old radio in your collection that you should have, but some of them are in need of refinishing, to be honest. If you want to try to do some cabinet refinishing, or leave them as is, your choice. But encourage you to take a close look at them at the fall auction. Again, there'll be a silent auction, really low starting bid, like a reserve bid to get things started. All proceeds will be going to the club. Any questions? All right.
Thank you, Dwight. Yeah, when Dwight contacted me on this and sent me the pictures, I was like drooling. But something tells me right now, Mama won't let me buy anything, so get the house fixed first, right? So as I said, I will do some additional advertising, promoting these as well. All right. I'm going to bring Brian on at 9:30, so that's about 9 minutes. We'll just kind of hang for a few minutes. All right, everybody, we'll go ahead and get started here. We have on via the World Wide Web, Brian Harrison. If you recall, 2 months ago, he did a presentation about radio gear from the Vietnam War. A lot of stuff was U.S. military, and a lot of it was Viet Cong military. It was our first Zoom presentation. I think it went very well. Then we had a couple of technical snafus, but you know, as Mr. Scott says, the more complicated the plumbing, the easier it is to foul up the pipes, right? He had run out of time, so Brian's graciously come back to do the tail end of that presentation and open up for Q&A. If you have questions, because I don't have my webcam, it's in a box, just talk loud or come over and smile into the laptop if you're so inclined. So with that, Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you. The floor is yours, sir.
All right, thank you, Lee, and thank you for having me back. Apologies for being so long-winded the first time around. So this is part 2. Mainly we're talking about the Army Security Agency, or ASA, today. I'm going to do a real quick 5-minute recap of the radios that the enemy used. And these were low-power HF radios, mostly used CW, and then, of course, they used later in the war VHF, FM, portable field radios, most of which were our radios. So a favorite of the VC was the GRC-9 because they got a lot of them from the French when the French left. Here's a picture of one being used by an Army Special Forces. Also, the Chinese supplied 30,000 some odd radios to the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong, and that's primarily what you find showing up from time to time. Here's a VC CW operator using one of the rigs. It's a 102E or an HD6. It's basically a GRC-9 clone, so it runs 15 to 20 watts on CW from 2 to 12 megacycles, basically just like our GRC-9. Here's one that I have in my collection. It was actually brought home by a Army chaplain who actually was a ham, and I got this from his estate. It still has some dirt on it. A lot of this equipment showed up in military surplus. In fact, a buddy of mine was at a Silent Key estate yesterday, and he purchased 3 Chinese military radios for me from the estate. So it's out there. It may be the transceiver that we just saw or the separates, which you see in this picture. And here's another radio being used by an NVA Army regular, again doing Morse code. This is a 71B1. It's a much lower powered rig, maybe 2 to 5 watts out, ran on dry batteries. It was replaced by a backpack type radio called a Type 63 or a 251A. This particular one was captured by the New Zealand troops in Vietnam. And this also only ran a couple of watts out. I think it went from something like 4 to 8 megacycles. So CW, it did have voice, but wouldn't go very far. And of course, VHF radios. Here's a picture of some of the enemy using some of our VHF FM radios, including the PRC 8, 9, and 10, which is what we started with. The radios, they just covered slightly different frequencies for infantry, artillery, armored, but they also overlapped. These were replaced by the Prick 25, which General Abrams said it was the single most important tactical field item in Vietnam. This one had a tube final, so it was a little more complex to power, and the battery didn't last as long. Later, they came out with the Prick 77, which was 12 volt, all solid state, so you could power it with a 12 volt battery. And later in the war, you could also add some encrypted voice capable. And if you saw one of these on somebody's back, he was probably walking behind a general or somebody like that. So the ASA in Vietnam, a great book. I can't recommend too highly. Enough is The Unlikely Warriors, Army Security Agency Secret War in Vietnam, 1961 to 73. And I didn't realize it, and I was in Vietnam, but I didn't realize that the ASA provided the best intelligence of the war. Here's a captured Chinese 71B, which we just saw. I'd love to have this one in my collection, but it's owned by the son of Colonel Edgar F. Hockman, who was at the time in 1967 was the chief of the United States ASA in the Pacific. And it was captured and given him, presented him when he came to visit one of the ASA units in Vietnam. Terrific artifact. And this is what a typical base would look like. They called them radio research groups. So, Army Security Agency arrives in Vietnam in 1961. Their mission is to intercept VC and North Vietnamese electronic communications and use these signals to locate the troops. And you can, what you see on the screen is the bread and butter of the Army Security Agent at the time. You've got two ASA guys. They're not sending Morse code, but they're listening to it all day long, and all they do is type out exactly what they are hearing. And of course, this isn't conversational CW. This is mixed groups, letters and numbers. And so, you know, there was no rhyme or reason, so you really had to listen hard. And, you know, they were judged by how good they could type it down correctly. Because if it wasn't correctly, it kind of messed up everybody else. ASA started off with some fixed direction finding sites, and they were in mobile vans. These are some verticals that you see in this field. Here's what one of the shelters or one of the containers where the equipment was. The receivers that they used, you see at Hamfest, the R390, the R390A, the green R392. There was also a version of the R390 called the R391 that it had 10 preset channels, so you could set them and very quickly move from one frequency to another. And there were some other variations of these radios, such as the R725 as well. So these are great radios. A specialized radio used by the ASA was the PRD-1. You see it in the picture. This was the mobile and portable radio direction finder, and it covered from 100 kilocycles up to 30 megacycles. And here's one in use in 1961. They're training a couple of South Vietnamese soldiers to locate signals. The first combat casualty in Vietnam was an ASA soldier. He was on the road. He was ambushed and killed along with the trainees that he had with him on the way to setting up one of these PRD-1s. Now, they use these receivers for short-range radio direction finding. You had to be within 8 to 10 miles of the target to be effective, which means you needed to be near the jungle. And it took three, at least two, but usually three different sites giving three different bearings, and when they put all this together, then they got a fix of where that particular enemy transmitter was. So that was fun, but as you can imagine, it wasn't very effective, so they knew they had to go to airborne direction finding, so they tried out a number of different aircraft, including this Otter here, which is one of the first successful aircraft. And for their receiving antennas, there's two vertical dipoles along the leading edge of the aircraft, and of course radios inside. Even then, the airplane had to fly directly toward the incoming signal. So they had to listen and figure out the direction to the signal. And then, of course, at least two, but usually three bearings to get a fix. But the good thing is sometimes the plane could do all three by itself if the transmitter was transmitting long enough. and they also could cover a lot more territory. Now, they also had some special helicopters, special UEs called left bank, and this was very successful. And they used this antenna that stuck out from the front of the aircraft, and they called it an elephant brander because that's what it looks like. And the big change was that in the past, when the ASA took some bearings and got fixes of the enemy, they would send it up to ASA headquarters, and then they would do something with it, and eventually they would send it out to the divisions who needed it. Well, in the case of Left Bank, they had the onboard ASA operators were actually assigned to the division, so everything was all very real time, and it was very, very successful, and it made the infantry units much more effective in neutralizing these things. So the ASA guy on the helicopter, he helped to find the enemy, but also he was involved in figuring out what the best response would be. It could be troop insertion, it could be artillery, it could be B-52 strike, it could be a helicopter, Loach and Cobra pink team, or it may just be to make a note, locate and make a note and track from there on out. A good example of this was in 1970, we invaded Cambodia because there was to try to capture all the supplies that were lined up on the other side of the border, but also to try to capture the VC Pentagon called Cosvin, okay? And of course, it was very successful in terms of capturing a lot of equipment, and they did find Cosvin, the facility itself, but the people knew we were coming, and they would just back up further into Cambodia. But the ASA was able to track the signals from the folks as they backed up into Cambodia. So that's pretty interesting. Here's another specialized aircraft used by the ASA. I love this Pink Panther downward-looking logo. It had two different vertical poles going through each end of the antenna, very similar to the first aircraft we saw. That was replaced by a newer version they called Wine Bottle, and you can see the much more substantial antennas in the wings, the vertical. And also, look at all the other antennas that are on this aircraft. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in addition to the ones used for the high-frequency direction finding. Now, on board that aircraft was what they called a receiver stack. And here's actually one that's in a museum up in Washington, D.C. And it was made up of two Collins 51S1 receivers, which you also might see at the Hamfest. And these are general coverage HF receivers. Here's a ASA repair guy working on a 51S1, has one on the bench there at Da Nang, circa 1969. The next aircraft was a bit larger aircraft, and they called this project Laughing Eagle. The airplane itself had much better flight characteristics, faster, could climb better, had more range. It also was roomier, so more room for electronic equipment. They also started using this to listen to VHF voice communications, and they would actually record these communications in addition to doing the direction finding on the high frequency signals as well. The other big advantage of this particular aircraft is that they could, the ASA operator in the back could obtain faster fixes, and the plane didn't have to be flying toward the source of the signal. So So the pilot could do his thing, and the ASA guy could do his thing, thanks to much better communications. And they also added much better navigation as well. Yeah, so around that time. So, there was a big invasion. Well, there was a big Tet offensive in 1968. Well, they planned to do one in 69 as well, but because of Laughing Eagle and the information that it heard, it was able to pinpoint the NVA First Division and figure out their plans that they were going to do a 69 Tet offensive, and so they were able to nip this in the bud and keep that from happening. So. And again, this was the first airborne system to successfully target the low-powered FM voice transmitters, VHF, being used. And the ultimate system used by the ASA in Vietnam was a project called Left Jab. Again, a slightly different aircraft, has this very interesting extendable loop. It's a spinning loop inside this enclosure. And for takeoff and landing, this whole assembly underneath the aircraft would go up into the aircraft itself. And then once they were airborne, they would lower that assembly. This was the first ASA aircraft to actually have a digital computer on board. It could do 360-degree direction finding, much faster. It's said that this new platform was certainly state-of-the-art, years ahead of any other intelligence-gathering aircraft operating anywhere else in the world. So, pretty good stuff. The ASA also did other things. Some of the messages were encoded. They would look at the volume of traffic, and you could also figure out that something was going to be happening if the number of signals went up significantly during a period of time, and that's what they worked on. So we also, since we were recording the FM transmissions now, someone needed to be able to translate that. That would be a combination of South Vietnamese. We also sent these tapes all the way back to Fort Meade, Maryland, and they were processed back there as well. The ASA did do enemy transmitter fingerprinting, but it wasn't as successful as, it wasn't that needed. Most of the ASA CW operators said they could identify their guys, the people they listened to day in and day out. And they were very prompt in their radio schedules, by the way. So they could tell, if it was the same operator, the same transmitter, different operator, different transmitter, and that type of thing. So, and also, they listened to all of our communications, out in the field and long distance, up and down the country to try to make sure that we weren't exposing too much very important information like upcoming events. So the ASA leaves Vietnam in 1973, and General Abrams is quoted as saying that the Army Security Agency saved more American lives than any other unit because it could tell where the NVA was, at what strength, and what they were going to do. But of course, we lost a number of ASA soldiers in Vietnam. Now, I'm not going to play this song. It's about 5 minutes long, but it's a pretty cool song. If you just go to YouTube and type in ASA Anthem, you'll get to see it. Here's the lyrics. Like, for example, down in the chorus, which is halfway down, second line, it says, "My trick chief says he'll bust me if I get one more group wrong," where the trick chief was the shift supervisor, for example. And the next line, it says, "My ETS is so far off I can't see the light of day." Well, that was the estimated time of separation from the Army. So, and they're saying, "Keep my cans on tight." Well, that's their headphones. And they're not tapping, they're tapping on their on their typewriters. They're not tapping. They're not sending Morse typically. So and the band actually has some Morse code in the song with a series of V's. Well, the enemy also, when they were tuning up their transmitter, they'd send V's just like us, and they would sign off with like SK, and so a lot of the typical Morse code techniques used by amateurs were used by the enemy as well. So special thanks, and I'll go to the Q&A, and if you want to hear more, we'll go back and listen to that song. So you guys decide. So.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Anyone have any questions? I have a broad question. It's probably outside of the scope of the time frame of this event, but I remember you saw the soldier with the backpack radio, which I remember seeing in the Forrest Gump movie, right? In the scenes where they're out in the field.
Yes.
And then I was watching MASH the other day. Of course, that was Korea, and they had the walkie-talkie about yay long.
Right. That was the PRC-6.
Okay.
The PRC 8, 9, and 10, our first FM field radios, they were used in Korea, and they had a strange kind of rounded handheld, and it's here. Let me go back and I'll show you the picture of it. Hang on just a second. Let me. I'm trying to figure out how to go back. Just a second. Sorry. Just do it this way. All right, so here we have a picture of VC and NVAs using some of our portable radios. They're the PRIC 8, 9, and 10, but over on the right, that was the PRC-6 handheld radio that also was compatible with that generation of field radios. Of course, on MASH, TV's not always correct. It may have been a BC-611, which was the World War II handy-talkie that was shown. I'm not sure. So does this look similar to what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, and you see all these showing up at Hamfest, and these are low band FM, typically from about I think around 35 megacycles up to about 75 megacycles. So 6 meters. The deviation is typically, we use 5 kilohertz deviation typically, and these are typically set for 15. But you can narrow them down if you've got some test equipment or whatever.
So how did they keep the tubes from being busted?
Well, in a lot of cases they didn't, and certainly these radios were designed. They were very rugged, and but I'm sure they did. They got shot. They got dropped, and everything else, and you would just basically replace it with another radio and keep going.
And I assume the chassis were all metal on all of these?
Yes. Yeah, these weren't light radios. I mean, they weren't terrible, but my hat's off to all the infantry guys who carried radios and ammo and food and extra batteries and on and on and on. So, but the PRIC 25s was a big. It was channelized radio, and it was much easier to use. Had a little better range. They had various antennas for the PRIC 25s. A long one, which people rarely used because it was like 9 feet tall, and you really didn't want to be seen as carrying a radio with a big antenna because it made you a target. So there was another smaller radio that kind of looked like a tape measure, a tape measure ribbon, and it was only about 3 feet tall. Of course, the range wasn't near as good, but in a lot of cases it would suffice. So, but it was a much smaller target. And the radio operator typically always walked behind the ranking officer, the ranking person in the squad. So that was another problem. They could identify who the head guy was by because he was walking behind the radio, and so they try to take them out, and also the next down the food chain would be the M60 gunners, because they had more firepower than the basic infantryman with his M16 or M14 or whatever.
And that's that machine gun also that was in Forrest Gump, the sort you put on the tripod and.
Yep, yes, the M60, yep.
I have,
It
well, I was not in
it evolved from the German MG-34 and MG-42 of World War II. So,
yes, sir.
Do you know what kind of digital computer was used for that
I
plane?
do not know the brand. It was very early. That would have been I think around 1970 or 71. So I'm not exactly sure. My guess is some kind of like a Honeywell or something like that. Not any of the PC manufacturers that we would recognize. So.
Who made the radios? Motorola?
RCA made a lot of the Prick 25s, certainly Motorola. I think they had multiple people making these radios, and typically they're tagged. A little tag on the radio will tell you who,
And I assume Collins made a whole bunch of them too, right?
Well, Collins made some other radios. They made the 51S ones that we saw in the receiver stack. There was a big PRC 47, which was a much bigger, heavier field radio that unfortunately the Marines had to deal with, and they were made by Motorola and also Collins. So all the different manufacturers that you might recognize, made radios.
Sylvania?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
When the ASA pulled out, did
Yep.
the South Vietnamese Army have an equivalent on?
Well, I was there at the end, and for example, I was in a helicopter unit at the end, and I think my unit actually flew the last official mission of the war, but that's neither here nor there. But when we stood down, we gave the Vietnamese our Huey helicopters, though we took the M60s off of them for some weird reason. And we took the Cobras, which had the most firepower, we took them back to Korea with us, and also the little observation helicopters called Loaches that would fly like 50 feet off the ground. We sent those back as well. So, yes, we left a lot of equipment behind for the South Vietnamese, but in a lot of cases it wasn't, it wasn't as capable as what had been when the Americans were there. So I would hope they still had some type of direction finding capability, but I'm sure it was a huge loss to lose the ASA
Yes, sir.
in Vietnam.
Good.
Ron, I've got a couple of questions. Well, one question, actually, I was in naval communications during that
Yep.
period, and,
Yep.
do you have any idea what the code speeds that these folks used, and, did they use 5-letter groups with mixed, numerals and, letters and whatever?
That's right. Yes, they did. And I think they used 5, and I think 6 and 7-letter code groups. And the speed was typically somewhere between 15 and 20 words per minute. They trained the ASA guys at their school to copy 22 words a minute, I think, 22 or 25, and send. But again, they didn't do much sending, at least not in Vietnam. So.
We still use some, CW back then, believe it or not, on some of the broadcasts, and I believe it was 5-letter groups with 26 maybe, or 24 or something.
Yeah, I believe it will. And also, the Army had its security agency. The Navy also had the equivalent organization, as did the Air Force. So, and all three of these organizations were monitoring the airwaves and trying to pick out intelligence and that would be useful for somebody. So it wasn't just the Army Security Agency. So.
Mark?
To break the code, did you have to compromise the code book from the enemy, or did they have some other means of breaking?
Well, before the Pueblo was captured off the coast of Korea, I think that was Circle 7, 1970 or so. Most of the CW messages were unencrypted. And, but after the Pueblo, shortly thereafter, they switched to one-time pads. And the reason why they had a lot of intelligence paper down in the bowels of the ship, and the Koreans let the Vietnamese know that we were monitoring and all that. And so what I've heard from some of the ASA guys is for a week, everybody stopped transmitting. Nobody transmitted for a week. And then they switched to one-time pads, which, are theoretically unbreakable. So they went to coded transmissions, which made our job a lot more difficult, and it made us also, depend on like traffic analysis, number of signals, and that type of thing, as opposed to the actual content.
All right, I think we're about out of Zoom time. Any other questions, thoughts, anything? Thank you, Brian, for coming back around for part 2. Again, very, very interesting. I got a hankering to try and find one of those walkie-talkies and put it on the shelf now, so.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll tell you, they show up at Hamfest, and I think they're very collectible. And in fact, the Asheville Radio Museum, I was just talking to Ron Beaver up there. I said we need to find a Prick 25 or a Prick 77 or something up there and have a little a Vietnam military radio display, because there's a lot of people come up to me and talk about their dad being a radio operator, or their uncle or their father, or whatever. So it's just that period. There's a lot of interest in the military radios of the Vietnam War. So
I think we're being dinged by the Zoom gods. So,
all right, well, thanks again, and
thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep, take care. Y'all have a good one. See ya.
That timed out quite nicely. Just by here. Yeah. Yeah, because you got a speaker right here. It's picking up, so, and they could hear, I went back there, they could hear well back there, so. That,
This isn't the 1950s. We've come a long way, baby.
That's my microphone.
Okay.
so, yeah, that was very, very entertaining. Yeah, we got the technical part figured out. Whole lot gooder this time than it was last time. So we know it works when we have our ducks in a row. Well, yeah, we'll figure out that one other little thing, but that worked very well. So that was good. That was very interesting, and I'm glad that he was able to finish the presentation up, and we had some Q&A, which was also good. So yay for us, and we'll just use this. So somebody knows somebody who's not here that you think might be a good presenter, a good topic, or whatever, who'd be willing to do something like this. Now that we know we can do it, let us know. We'll arrange and get some people, so they don't all have to be in Atlanta, right? We get people from far, far away, and add to our knowledge base here as we go forward.
There's a wealth of capability in the club in Maryland, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And that raises a very interesting point, because I think there are a number of presentations that they provide this way.
And you're a member of that club, right?
And I'm a member of that club.
Okay. Okay. Well, so if you don't mind, to whomever, float the idea up there, and
I'm going to be speaking, I'm going to be hanging out at Kutztown with the guy who is going to be the new president of that.
all right. Well, tell them we might want to pick their brains for some presentations, and we'll do that. Okay, so we're there. This is kind of the time for the general open whatever. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts? Somebody's looking for something. This is, again, open round robin. Needing anything? Got something to get rid of? Looking for an XYZ box? Okay, I got a question for you all. Again, the infamous record player I'm trying to rebuild. So you got the can, that the coils go in, right? And there's a lid on it that's geared, that's all geared. There's 4 screws that go in from the lid into the base of the can, right? In the spring. I only have 2 screws. Any idea of where I can get some additional, or what the sizes are for those additional screws that hold that plate into the can? This is part of the whole spring mechanism, right? That you crank up. There's 2 cans with 2 coils, and you crank them up, and they do the little business. And what's also weird is that the threads or whatever on the plate are slightly different than the can. So I can get a screw that's the right size for the lid, but it's too big for the can. It's very weird whatever they've done. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
It's totally different because of the fact that I was a handmade. And thinking that makes it,
Got it.
so it's not gonna be standard.
Okay.
It's gonna be-
Because I mean, all 8 holes do the same thing, so,
George can help you
okay.
break like this roll.
Yeah, he and I have interacted on a couple of things, okay. Pardon?
You have 2 screws, right? You need 2 more?
I need a total of 8, so I need 6 more.
So you got 2 screws fit in the other 6 holes?
They all do the same thing, so it doesn't matter which hole I put in or which can I put in, the screws behave the same way.
Do you have a thread gauge?
No.
Hardware store.
That's far too complicated for me.
Okay, well, that's,
It's not a 632.
how you measure screws. So, I want to know what size they are, you have to measure with the thread gauge.
Yeah, okay.
I don't really know what you're talking about. I get a picture on the web or something that you can look at and see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you bought a screw in one time, you could perhaps do this screw, one of the ones you've got, and maybe take a look at it and
Yeah,
got a metal line. Make you count on it, maybe like I did.
okay.
If you're close to Tucker, if you're Calhoun.
I'm in Calhoun now, I'm even farther away.
Well, I was just going to say that Handy Ace Hardware in Tucker has a wonderful hardware department with people. You bring one of those.
Okay.
And they'll walk you through, I mean, it's aisles.
Because I've gone to Home Depot with that. This is way too, no. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, is it a very tiny screw?
Tiny little screw, it's about that tall.
I ran into something similar to that, and I went to a eyeglass place where they have screws.
Yeah.
Eyeglass, and I went to Hobbytown.
Uh-huh,
Hobbytown has an assortment of little screws.
yeah. It's bigger than that. It's not like an eyeglass screw, but it's,
Yeah.
again,
You're using ends made on your spring with programs?
I got new springs all the way around. I got 2 new coil springs, brand new. Yeah, I think so. They were $50 a piece, but they're brand new and they're perfect and. Yeah, no, I didn't. I don't have a torch. I didn't want to do it, so it was just. Yeah. So.
I had to take the spring out, and I had to do it twice, put it back in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was just, I looked at my hands and everything else.
Yep.
You gotta do it barehanded.
Oh, I know. Well, actually, I've used getting it in is not too much of a problem. I use the big heavy gloves, but
It was the outer part, the inner part, you can sometimes get wood.
yeah.
But it was the outer.
I'm just afraid of letting go and being decapitated with the spring.
I had it the first time.
Is there? You got a question, comment?
Ace is a good place.
Ace is the place where. Oh, yeah.
Full hardware.
This guy will have a thread gauge, and he can tell you
Okay.
the thread pitches.
It seems about the size of a 632, right?
I don't know what the heck you're talking about, but I guess small. I even tried a little Gorilla Glue that lasted about 2 seconds. Came right off. So any other thoughts, questions, whatever?
I think Paul and I are going to the Kutztown radio meet next weekend. Anybody else going up to Kutztown? No. Squires is probably going. Who? Squires? Squires. Paul Squires. I think Sarah's my name, get it.
He goes everywhere, doesn't he? All right, there's our clicker. Show and tell time. So since we got, I'll play Vanna. I didn't bring the dress today. So, just because we don't have very many radios over there. Military. Yeah, military was the other time. I thought having 2 military days were probably a little. I just shoot a wide shot. That's fine. Okay. So radio number 1, Reed. I can pick this up. Oh, this is pretty. Here, I'll stand where you can talk into the mic.
Wait a minute. Let me have the papers so I can remember what you said. We got a mic. Hey, read.
Here, talking to that there.
Yeah, what does the paper say? This mic is this,
Yep, you're good.
needs more gain. Let me see, the member name is Reed Fisher. That's me. Item name is Reed. Manufacturer is Reed. Year produced, 1970, I think. Country of origin, USA. This is a 2-tube TRF radio that I built around 1970, so it's very personal to me because I built it. Reed built it, therefore Reed is talking about my personal story. So any question? This is a 2-tube, actually there's 3 tubes in it. Well, one is the power amplifier. The 2 tubes are, the 2 RF tubes are 6J7s, and the power amplifier I think is a 6K6. It needs an external power supply, which was a general radio power supply. These little general radio supplies were available at the Hamfest then, but gone now. Any questions?
Is this regenerative, Reed?
Regenerative, of course. One of the knobs is the regeneration control. I lost the schematic, and as I said, the power connector goes to a general radio power supply, little cube things, about a 6-inch cube, provides about 250 volts, and then 6.3 volts for the filaments.
Unit power supply.
That's right, they were called unit power supplies. Paul remembers that. 250 volt DC, I guess they could produce about 50 milliamps. Some were regulated, most were not.
So did you build the cabinet?
Oh, no, I'm not a cabinet maker. I just built inside that
Oh, okay.
strange looking dial, which is a Kurtz craft, I think. It was obtained at Dayton. So, no, I built the inside, but not the cabinet.
Oh, those common, you buy them. All right, the next one. Is this a Reed production as well? Is this yours as well?
Oh, no, that's not mine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's,
Do you need the?
Yeah, since we were having radios with the personal story, I've brought this radio in before, so indulge me as I tell the story again. This is the model of radio I grew up with when I was a grade school youngster, and because of its great little size, I would listen to the St. Louis Cardinal baseball games with the radio tucked under my pillow at night. And back in those days when Cardinals had Lou Brock and Bob Gibson, Orlando Cepeda, Mike Shannon, they won the World Series in 1967. I think they went to the series in '68. But when you're young, you followed your favorite sports teams, and in Central Illinois, you were either usually a Cubs fan or a Cardinals fan, and I was a Cardinals fan because they were winners. But that radio, I wasn't thought too much about it until here just recently. When you think of the transistor radios of that time, the tuner usually just had numbers on it, or you had a number on the case. Magnavox used a dial string and a pointer, which was, when you think about it, for that size, that's quite the deal.
Well, and the added production cost.
Exactly. So that, I don't know how much that radio cost. Maybe it says on that right up there when they were made. But it's a 8 transistor radio, 9 volt, but it always had great reception. And when I came across it, I think just out of curiosity on eBay, it's like, oh, I got to have one, because I had one of these when I was a kid, and made in 1965, I think. So yeah.
Time labs on it too, till the fence marker.
I don't believe it did.
Nope,
So it was made after that.
probably.
So that's kind of my boyhood radio model when I was listening to Cardinal ball games.
Everything but a log scale. I don't see a log scale.
Yeah. All right, who's next?
Okay. When I was a kid growing up, we had this Farnsworth radio sitting on top of our Philco refrigerator. And I don't know what actually happened to that one. This one is identical. I found this in a junk shop someplace. It was really in pretty bad condition. So I restored it back because it was a big piece of my childhood. We used to listen to WKBW and WEBR and all the stations in Buffalo. And after restoring it, I brought it into my mother, who was in hospice at the time, and she just absolutely lit up. Her eyes got so big, and she related to me that she could remember the day she bought that radio in 1946, and the person she was with was her girlfriend, who still lived in our neighborhood. And so it was quite the tale. And that particular ivory color, I had a tough time matching it. I went to a model shop, and it's called Panzerwagen Interior Buff. So there you go. If you ever saw a German Tiger tank, that would be inside the turret. But it was a nice experience.
This one has the log scale on it. No civil defense with log scale.
Could I,
Well, this was way before civil defense, though, wasn't it?
I spent some time in the Chicago area, and there's a Cubs story that I really like. In the days when they couldn't win anything, at one point the story
That was
goes
yesterday, wasn't it?
that somebody called up and said, "What time does the game start?" And the voice on the other end said, "What time can you make it?" So
You're the next one right here. My cable won't go that far.
Oh, yes. He does a fantastic job.
Okay, so this is not my story, but this is a customer's personal story. This woman, I forget where she's, somewhere in the Midwest. She has a Silvertone radio that's a family heirloom, and she had it restored, but the one on the right is the original bezel, which is warped a little bit, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. She's really OCD about having this thing be perfect. So she wanted me to make a dial cover for it, and I says, well, I can't make a crooked dial cover for your crooked part. So I made her one that would fit inside of that, but she, it just wasn't good enough. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, send it to me and I'll see if I can make a straight one for you. So I've spent a lot of time trying to reverse engineer this thing and make a copy of it. And it turned out, confusingly similar. So I sent her a picture of it, after I probably spent, 20 hours on this project. And she says, "Oh, I love it, but could you make it a little bit darker brown?" So I said, okay. I sent her a bunch of palette of Amazon filament that I could print with, and she says, "Oh, I like this one." So that's coming in today, so I'll be able to print it. But failed prints, I mean, it only takes like 15 cents worth of material to print one of those, so you can have failed prints all day long. It doesn't cost you any money, and it makes the parts while you sleep, so it doesn't take any time either. So, but anyway, that was really an interesting project to try to reverse engineer a bezel, which was a fairly complex one. Round ones are easy, but that one has some unusual features. So, good experience for me, saying, I'm not doing this anymore. No.
Well, and a plug for his work, as you all know, again, the record player that will never go away. The original mount for the tone arm, it was pot metal. It's just one step away from becoming dust. Can't find anything on it. So I found a 3D designer, made some specs. He created a CAD file for me, sent it to Mark, and he created this beautiful, perfect 3D printed reproduction. Of course, I don't know what the rest of the parts are with it, but at least if I find that, I've got a perfect 3D reproduction that he printed out. Was beautiful. It was great.
Yeah, no talent on my part, just the printer. So your designer did all the work, but that's not cheap, right? So
I paid $90.
yeah.
And with unlimited edits. I only had one, but unlimited edits. So he did a great job. What is it? It's called Fix. There's a source where people freelance work, all kinds of stuff. And there were a whole bunch of designers. Most of the designers wanted to do, Shrek and character animation. I said, I don't need that. I need like an engineer. This guy was an engineer, whatever. So it was great. The last one, Ben.
As you may have observed, that's got nothing to do with radios. It's just the handbook to my first car, which, as I described some couple of months ago, was a terrible car. The closest thing it came to, they did actually have a radio version. They called it Aero Minx. You can. Oh yeah, sorry. It's interesting just to see how crude the engineering was. So, but anyway. We were in Ireland over the summer, and we went to Clifton, which is where, what's he called, Marconi had his first transatlantic station, just to see what was there. There's not a whole lot left, although, I mean, they had a whole generating station, a big steam power plant. They had to get right to this place, Clifton, which is just on beyond Galway, right in the middle of nowhere. So it was, but the place was largely destroyed by the Irish Patriots sometime in the 20s, I think, so there's not much to see there. Another interesting, to me, but anyway, some of Marconi's early transmissions were between Flatholm Island in the Bristol Channel and the south coast of Wales, and also between Breen Down in the south coast of Wales. My great-grandfather was the harbour master of Bridgewater, which is a small town, port town in Somerset. And family legend has it that he actually picked up Marconi when he was floating about in the Bristol Channel. So that's my story anyway. It's all pretty.
You'll recall when I did my bio thing, my dad and my parents were on board. Had a film at my company.
Any radio of any interest which I had of mine has long since been destroyed.
So we have, Ben and I have some commonality in cars in addition to radio.
Lloyd's not there, somebody take pictures.
No, I'll snap pictures afterwards. Yeah, I'll grab them on the way out. Yeah, if you can leave your stuff here for just a minute, so I can grab some pictures before y'all go. All righty. Where are we?
I could tell one brief story.
Go for it.
of my father being, just before World War II started, he was working for the FCC. We lived in Tallyville, Delaware, which is right outside Wilmington. And the Japanese fleet had sortied for the attack on Pearl Harbor. And what they did was they took the radio operators from the ships and they put them on shore. And they continued to communicate with each other because the intercepts could identify the senders because it was all Morse code, and they knew they were the people from the ships, but they knew they weren't moving. So they knew the Japanese fleet had sortied, but they didn't know what they were up to. And so when the attack on Pearl Harbor occurred, they said, now we know, now we understand what they were doing. They were trying to deceive us to think that the ships were not at sea, and they at least knew something was fishy. And he got involved in some other stuff before World War II, where they actually intercepted some German people who were taking a station wagon out to the shore in New Jersey, and they broke the code as to where they were going to go. They had a station wagon, and they could transmit and then load all this stuff back in the vehicle and take off. And he went along with one of them on one of these intercepts, and they caught the guys. And he was told to stay in the vehicle that they came in, and the guys ran, and they shot him down. And this was before World War II started, so he had some very interesting stories to tell, apropos of the kind of stuff that radio intelligence, even then, he was involved in that. When the war started, then they closed down that whole operation and went to a different system. But he used to tell me those stories when I was a little kid.
About that, so I want to get this clear in my head. On the Japanese side, they had the Japanese telegraphers put ashore.
Yes.
Put ashore where?
I don't remember. He told me.
In the United States.
No. It was over on the other side.
Okay.
And they were listening to because these guys were continuing to transmit it
Yeah.
as if the ships were, regular traffic. And they were on shore, and they knew they weren't moving.
And they knew the fists of the operator.
They knew the fists of the operators, so they could identify that this was one of the guys on the Shokaku or whatever. And so they knew where these guys were. They didn't know exactly where they were, but they knew they were on shore. They weren't moving, and they were the guys that normally were the chief code senders on these ships, and they weren't moving, and they knew the fleet was out somewhere else, and they were observing radio silence.
We could have gone one further rather than just leaving them on shores. We could have been another boat to send them somewhere else.
Well, I don't know. At that point in the war hadn't started yet. I don't know how sophisticated the whole thing was, but he had, and during the war, he partially broke one of the codes that the Germans were sending from the U.S., and he sent the information into the FCC in Washington that he had figured out. And he got a message that said, you will be at the Pentagon on a certain time at a certain day. He was, and what they explained to him was that he had intercepted traffic from a site that was spoofing the Germans. And he was interrogated for an entire day that he said he would never forget, and was informed that if he ever spoke any word to anyone about that, he would be confined for the duration. And he said, I believe them. So he did have some interesting time.
All right, where are we? Stuff for sale, stuff for free, stuff for whatever. You know the routine, you know the deal. There's some stuff for free there, right? Did who? Oh. Yeah, somebody brought free stuff in too, which is also very, very cool. The stuff on the left, free stuff, stuff on the right, not so free. Donation. Reminder, no meeting next month. The meeting is the swap meet, Fowler Center, Pavilion number 1. If you're working it, please be there at 7:30. If you're working it to orchestrate, not working to sell stuff. If you're there to sit up and sell, 8 o'clock. Again, power, no food, bring your favorite whatever. The November meeting, show and tell, branded radios. I've been to Roger's house. He's got every logo known to man on some radio somewhere. So that will be the show and tell. Eric is going to give a demonstration on software-defined radio receivers, which will be very interesting. The hams here, you know, all of the newest radios are SDR radios anyway. So that'll be very interesting to hear from that. And will you be talking from a ham radio perspective or just in general? In general. In general?
Yeah, across the spectrum.
Okay. I see tons of them now on Amazon. They're just all these, you know, for $50, these shortwave general coverage SDR receivers, and just pretty amazing what they can do. And then Aries is going to be our member of the month in November. And it's going to be very interesting because he's got such a, besides being a world traveler, he's got a lot of, he always comes up with stuff. It's like comes out of the woodwork, and there's Aries with an answer or a solution, whatever. So, very good. Remember, nominations for officers, whatever, in November. If you want a job, don't want the job, got a friend who wants a job, you know, let us know. It's all open. And also at that point, I will let everyone know if any or all, not counting Paul, of the officers want to stay in their role yet. Okay. I've not heard from anybody. Paul's the only one we know that is not going to be returning. So again, Treasurer, it would be very unethical for me to be the president and the treasurer. Even though I'm not going to do anything shystery, it just, I would much rather not have that on my plate. Plus, I failed at math, so you don't want me with a ledger. And that would be the end of the meeting. So enjoy. Thank you very much. We'll see you in October.